Hello, my friends, and happy Friday to you. If you're going to work, you're going to have a fantastic work day. And if you're coming from work, happy weekend, my friends. Maybe you're going to have a party. Some people comment, why do you do it? Why do you tell me to have a good day? I don't want you to tell me to have a good day. Well, I have struggled with depression for the past 5 years, my friends. I'm on strong antidepressants. I'm on strong medication. I have diagnosed ADHD. So for me, this helps me focus on the positive, and it's like a coding to my mind. I'm gonna have a good day. So maybe it helps you too, but I'm doing it also to cope with my life. So I hope you don't mind. Now, good news. There is a reason for my happiness today, because the European Parliament invited Moldova and Ukraine to accession talks. It was confirmed yesterday at the meeting of the Parliament, and you won't believe what happened. All of the countries were unanimous. We need Ukraine in the EU. We need to start the talks. And also for Moldova. Moldova has had an issue with Transnistria, which is a Russian separatist region. And for that reason, they have been behind the door to the EU for a long, long time. And now it's time to change that. But there is one country in the EU who is against all of that, and that is Hungary. Viktor Orban, to the very end, was against the accession talks of Ukraine and Moldova into the EU. And do you know how the European Parliament, which is a democratic institution, found a unanimous vote for the acceptance of Ukraine and Moldova? Because Viktor Orban, representing Hungary, left the room. Deliberately left the room so the rest of the countries in the EU can vote on what they want, and they all agreed that the EU should accept accession talks to Ukraine and Moldova. I'm so glad to hear this. It sends a clear message to Putin that the EU, as a unified institution of 1 billion people living in Europe, accepts Ukraine into one of us. And I agree with it, I stand behind it, and we are stronger together. Now, what are the reasons why Hungary and why Viktor Orban stepped down? I mean, Viktor had a veto right. He would have remained in this room and said no, then this vote wouldn't have gone past, because it's democracy. One vote. The rules in the European Parliament is that it requires unanimity. Everybody has to vote the same way. Well, Viktor left the room. Why did he stand down? Well, because Russia cannot give Hungary 10 billion euros. European Union works in a specific way that if you're in the EU, you're getting a ton of money from the EU. A lot. So much so that you could never get from anywhere else. Estonia, for example, has gotten unbelievable amounts of money from the EU, and we need that money because all of the money goes to building railways, schools, hospitals, roads. It goes to infrastructure and children. So for me, it's absolute necessity to be in the EU. For Hungary, it's the same. And EU has frozen Hungary's funds, so no more money to Hungary because Hungary has been a bad boy. And Viktor Orban being with his actions deliberately or undeliberately playing into Putin's hands is not getting any money. And we're talking about billions, perhaps tens of billions. That is an amount Russia cannot give Hungary. So it's an obvious reason. Viktor Orban is not that dumb. He really needs the money for Brussels, as does any country in the EU, because it's good for the country's economy. But that is not it. The EU's decision to grant Georgia candidate status leaves the EU with the possibility to be involved in Caucasian affairs in the future. Yes, Georgia has been waiting to be granted a candidate status for over 10 years, and now they finally got it. It's a huge breakthrough. Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine. 3 countries that have been pushed by Russia further from the EU, and now they're being still accepted closer to the EU. In my eyes, it's a huge victory. And now, my friends, I bring you Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas. Let's see what she has to say.
First of all, we have to keep supporting Ukraine. Estonia made last week a pledge to support Ukraine militarily for at least 4 coming years with 0.25% of our GDP.
Whatever country you are in, please find out what percentage of your country's GDP is allocated towards Ukraine. Let's say Norway, Germany, France. What percentage of your country's GDP has your country given to Ukraine? Just out of interest, put it in the comments so we can all compare. I now know for Estonia it's 0.25% of our entire GDP to be given to Ukraine.
plus short-term military aid. I think this is very important that we do this so that Ukraine can win this war.
Now, for Estonia, we have given 33% of our entire military budget and capabilities to Ukraine because for us it's simple. If Ukraine loses, we lose. So we have no option but to make Ukraine win, and we give everything we can to Ukraine to make them win. Now, my friends, something funny to you. This would be the moment where I usually say, get your popcorn, because you know the Russian shenanigans with the Finnish border, with the 1,000-kilometer long Finnish border. Finland closed all their border points with Russia in November, the end of November. Everything until 14th of December, where they decided to open one border point again to see how Russia would react. So yeah, they opened one. And you know what happened? Immediately, Russia started funneling migrants on bikes to that border point. Immediately, on the first hours of opening the point. So, what happened now? It can be summarized with two sentences. 14th of December, Finland opens border point. 15th of December, Finland closes the entire border with Russia. Yes, the entire border is now closed again. Finland is not a country to be pushed. Even for 3 hours, you push them, they will close the border. They're ready. Simo Hauha will get up from his grave, grab his rifle and hit in another 500. If you know, you know. I'm glad to see my Nordic brothers are so determined and they stand firm behind their decisions. They're not afraid not to be played around with. Way to go. Now, my friends, a video translated by Dmitry, or war translated. 2 injured Russians were discharged from a hospital in Luhansk and dumped to wait for a bus to Rostov for 4 days in an abandoned village, according to this video. Let's watch the video. These are guys who were not immediately sent back to the front as meat. So what happens to the Russians who managed to escape the system? How are they treated? They should be lucky, right? Win the lottery, not being sent back to the front, not have to die for your Tsar. What happens to you? Well, let's see. They dumped us, wait for the Rostov bus. No light, no heating. We got sick, both had surgery recently. No food, no water. They told us to stay here for 3 to 4 days before being picked up. Here's where we sleep and warm up. Our first night, we were already in awe, really cold. I mean, this abandoned place here, this is how I would describe the Russian world. Back in the 90s in Estonia, or even beginning of 2000s, where we still had a lot left from the Soviet culture. I mean, now we're all fully European, everything. But back then, we only were accepted into the EU, and we still had the houses like this. This is the Russian world. This is how they mostly live. The majority of Russia lives like this. Not Moscow, not St. Petersburg, but everything else. So these are our conditions. Some abandoned village. Yeah, it sounds about right. I've seen it in my childhood. Villages like that in Estonia, even where majority of the population spoke Russian. In Luhansk or whatever. We were brought from hospitals. We have rats. Rats. No water, no food, nothing. My friends, look at this footage. Do you notice something? It's not just another FPV drone footage you've seen. No, this one is bought by you. This unit is SBU Alpha, the best special forces unit in all of Ukraine, Alpha Force of Ukraine. And they gave me permission from the SBU specifically to allow to publish their unit, to say this after I given them the drone. These are the drones that you bought that I delivered in November. In this video, you can see 50 kamikaze drones. You can actually see your 700 USD flying and destroying a Russian vehicle. This made possible by you. This is Artur's army drones destroying Russian equipment as we speak. And we're going to do it again in January. And then from that point on, we're going to do it again and again and again until victory. So if you see any of my fundraisers, you know this is the most efficient and fast way to destroy Russian vehicles and guarantee Ukrainian freedom and independence. I deliver everything personally myself, no middlemen attached. I give them to the units, I film everything for you, I upload it, and I show you the footage later, right, like I do now. You guys donated a huge sum of money for these drones, and now you see the outcome, destroyed Russian vehicles. Let's keep it going, my friends. Keep an eye on my channel. I will do regular fundraisers, so save money, and if you want to help Ukraine, help it through my fundraisers. Thank you, my friends. Now, my friends, here's a video which I don't even have the backstory for, but it's so unbelievable. I want to share it. And the only way to describe it is it's like bakasuka, or I don't know, the Russian term for Russian world way of doing things in the Russian army. See, I will fast forward so you guys can see what's really going on. So there's a Russian GRAT system, which is just a very old and robust tubes on a truck. That's what GRAT is usually. There's a Russian fighter jet, and they decide to do a little shenanigans together. Let's see how it works out. The fighter jet is flying, the GRAT is just chilling there, being all Russian, and suddenly, kaboom, it starts shooting, and the jet is right up there. First missile goes, second missile goes, and look at this. What is this, 2 meters? 3 meters. It would be the first instance where a GRAT, a very robust and inaccurate weapon, shoots down a fighter jet. This is a stupid, robust, old area weapon. It would never be able to shoot down a fighter jet, but Russians can make it happen. You know, they can make it happen if necessary. Look at this. This pilot would have gone the weirdest way possible. What happened to Ivan? I was hit by a GRAT system. Only in Russia, my friends. Meanwhile, we talk about the fights in southern and eastern Ukraine, but we gotta talk about the northern border. I will fast forward this video so you can see it actually. This is building out the border with Belarus. Ukraine has a huge border with Belarus, and Belarus, being just a Russian colony, a Russian puppet state, fully hosts Russian capabilities, which means tanks, infantry, fighting vehicles, infantry. So Ukraine wants to make sure they never cross over the border. And the way I see it, they never will, because this border, helped to be built with European and American money, will be good. I mean, look at this. Okay, barbed wire, dragon's teeth, right? And then a full concrete wall with barbed wire. I mean, of course you can drive through it with a tank, but it will just take some time and make some noise, and then you will get an artillery attack on your back. So it won't be that easy anymore as it was 2022, 24th of February. So, and it's also mined. And we see what the mines are doing in southern Ukraine right now. Russians will have, if they ever tried, a huge issue with casualties trying to get through these mined areas with dragon's teeth. This would be the Ukrainian Suroviki line on the northern border with Belarus. Glad to see it. Yesterday, my friends, Putin gave his longest interview or speech up to date, the very longest. And I will now sum up his speech to you, the most, I don't want to say important points, the points that maybe you should know. Speaking in great deal about the situation in the war, the impression is that the Russian president is outright lying and trying to drastically embellish the situation. In fact, from his performance, one could conclude that he actually has such an overview of the situation as he describes. He tends to ignore negative topics. So his speech was fully positive. Everything is okay in Ukraine. We're not carrying any losses, and Ukrainians are carrying huge losses. That was his whole speech as the president of Russia to his people. And looking at this video, you can see that he's not lying. He actually believes it. That means that the information fed to him is also such. And it is known, people closest to Putin, that he does not accept negative news to such an extent that people have stopped delivering it to them, or they have to sugarcoat it or give them half-truths. This is what Putin has. Overall, the Russian president mentioned that 617,000 soldiers are fighting against Ukraine. Naming such a number may be related to the fact that Ukrainian leaders recently stated that the size of the Ukrainian army is about 600,000 men. The size of the Russian army in Ukraine has so far been estimated about 150,000 less, but eventually Russian leaders do not want their army to be officially smaller than Ukraine's. And now, if you say that how come that the attacker side has less men than Ukraine, which is defending, we have to think that Ukrainian border is surrounded from 3 sides by a hostile nation, Russia and Belarus. Now, if you have 600,000 men and you have to divide it to 2,000 kilometers of border, they have to guard the northern border with Belarus, the eastern border, northern and eastern border with Russia, and then fight on the southern front lines and eastern front lines. This soaks up well more than 600,000 men. And it's much easier for Russia as an attacking force with minor forces to do more damage because they can be on a very concentrated area and they don't have to man the borders in Belarus or northeastern Ukraine, because they know Ukraine has no capabilities or intentions to attack deep into Russia right now. Russian President Vladimir Putin, in discussing the war, tried to ignore the topic of losses, indicating the sensitivity of the issue in Russia and an inability to address it effectively in political terms. From Putin's narrative, it appears that there are few casualties, taking a clear political risk, as the exact opposite is known to be true in the Russian army. That means the Russian army officers know best about the casualties. They are there, they see the cannon fodder go. Now, if Putin says there are no casualties, then the army officers see on the TV that just the Tsar is lying, directly lying. So this puts a huge rift between Putin and the army. Of course, the army is under Shoigu and Shoigu is loyal. But if it comes down to the officers, then let's take Prigozhin's rebellion. Prigozhin's rebellion went into Rostov, the southern military district of Russia. No shots were fired and they surrendered to Prigozhin's rebellion. Why? Because these were officers who know that Putin is lying to them, who know that they might be sent next as cannon fodder. Of course, they're not going to do any kind of coup or any kind of armed rebellion, but given such opportunity and given an option whether to shoot Prigozhin and fight to the death for your Tsar who is lying to you, or just save yourself and let them in, they chose to save themselves. That's what it comes down to. If any kind of strong men in the future take matters into their own hands, these officers who are lied to by Putin, stating that there are no casualties, don't worry about it, they will not be loyal to Putin. We're talking about lieutenants and majors, lower officers, not generals. Look at this, my friends. After Putin's speech, immediately billboards started appearing in Moscow with the quotes from Putin's speech. I mean, this is full 1984 George Orwell. The Big Brother is watching and the quotes are everywhere. Another view from Moscow. This is insane. And actually, as you can see, this Stockman right here, there's a story with it. It's a Finnish brand. The Russians flat out stole it. After the war, Finland pulled most of their brands out of Russia. The Russians, of course, they have this whole building. It's a mall. We have Stockman in Estonia, also in Tallinn. I go there all the time. So the Finnish pulled out, saying that you gotta end this shenanigans. Like McDonald's sold their all assets in Russia to Vkusna i Tochka, which is tasty, period. I'm not kidding you, that's the name. So Stockman did the same. Sold their assets and said, you gotta change the name. It's not us anymore. They refused. They said, no. We continue to operate under Stockman and we just steal it, hijack it. So the Russians hijacked this huge mall branding and there's nothing the Finnish can do about it. So that's the story. That's how the Russians do. It's a culture of theft. And I was showing you this video about Putin's speeches, Putin's quotes in a 1984 George Orwellian style in Moscow, and boom, Stockman. I can just take any random thing from here and open up how this is a culture of theft in Moscow. It is weird. I'm not kidding you. Google the Stockman story. After Russian President Vladimir Putin's speech, Russians decided, so Putin decided to also try to hammer in his speech into Ukrainians. So he decided to attack Ukraine with Kinzhal missiles. The newest, the baddest Russian missiles, which were shot down by Patriot missiles last year. Out of 3 Kinzhal missiles, 1 was shot down and 2 hit the targets. Now, it is known that Russia altogether has below 100 Kinzhal missiles, so this is a very rare attack, of course. And talking about attacks on Ukrainian territory, they also sent Shahed drones, 14 of which were destroyed. Out of 14, so all of them. But 15 were sent, and 1 fell onto Romanian territory, fell physically into Romanian lands, so into a NATO country. Now, this is not the first time this has happened. It has happened before, and NATO has not reacted to it or flat out denied it. We're yet to be seen how Romania reacts to it now, but I would love to see unity. Whatever NATO countries talk about it, unity. Putin and Russia smell weakness and they use and capitalize on it. So we have to be unified and strong and stand as one front against this tyranny. My friends, now my favorite part of the video, which is butchering the patron names. These guys give me a security net to focus all of my energy into aiding Ukraine. And as you have seen, I send drones to Ukraine, which is bought by you. They're already hitting targets. I'm sure the SPU Alpha has already used them up. So in January, we'll deliver some more with Noel, whose fundraiser got at 125K for drones. So 100 more drones, for SBU Alpha. Let's make it happen. Erling Arvidsson, Rod Alexander, Cornel Pikskei, Mark Steenpakkers, Scott Koch. Thank you to these 5 people. And as always, my friends, until my next update, which will be on Monday. So I'll see you on Monday. Slava Ukraini. Bye-bye.